Yeah. So I have a background in doing social policy and public policy research, and studying also time, as Eva mentioned, and work and family issues, and lately also I've been looking at the digitalization, both from the view of family relations and also from the view of work, so how work is changing. There you have my contacts. I'm very happy if you want to comment later on or want to get in touch with me. So just please drop me a line. That would be great. So basically, what I'm going to introduce today is something I entitled The Micromechanisms of Daily Life Among Couples. And I'm analyzing the time management system, really to understand how time, care, and work is organized in a family. Let me just see now, somehow there we go. Yeah. So basically, I'm introducing a study that I did as part of my academy research fellow project that has ended already, but as you know, the research interests continue, and so I'm doing similar research still, but this was a particular project that ran for 5 years. There I was using different kinds of data, really. I was using the survey questionnaires and register data, and also qualitative study. And I'm actually explaining about the qualitative study today. So the project was funded by the Academy of Finland. So what I thought today, I just say a few words about Finland and about labor markets from the gender perspectives, not too much on that, but a little bit, just to give you a little background, and then a little bit of background and kind of justifications why I think family time and time is a very interesting topic. And then little background on the money management systems of the households, which kind of served as a framework for my study. And then about the couple time economy, then I explain the data and the methods of what I've used, and then the findings and few concluding remarks. Okay. I wanted to start explaining a little bit about the Finnish labor markets, because there are certain characteristics that are quite important. Here is the kind of the employment rate of men and women by age. Men and women, you know, age group 15 to 64, and this is kind of the long-term image of that. So what you see in general is that the employment rate is rather high, also among women and among men. Internationally compared, I think it's still so that the employment rate of men is a bit lower actually than compared internationally. So there's a little bit of more people outside, or men outside labor markets. And what you see here also is that we have had two kind of rather big recessions, especially the 1990s, the mid-1990s. You see a really huge decline in the employment rate, and that kind of affects the Finnish society in many ways. It kind of brought up the insecurity of the labor markets to everyone's kind of to their part of their daily life. And again, you know, then just before 2010, in Finland as elsewhere, there was a decline and kind of a drastic change in the labor markets. And the reason why I'm saying about this is that it was really the recession in the mid 1990s and after them, and then secondly, just before the 2010, is that there was this sort of kind of insecurity in the labor markets where was increased, and also it kind of in the 1990s, then we had a very strong belief in the Finnish kind of welfare state system, but then after that, certain policies have been eroding. So the kind of the whole understanding of the Finnish society then kind of a little bit changed. Okay, so a few more notes on the, I'm using the information from the Statistics Finland, and here I wanted to show you the working patterns of parents. So this is very characteristics for Finland, is that we have rather high female employment and also maternal employment, which I didn't show, but then you can see it here that the mothers of children tend to be at work. But when the child is under 3 years old, you see that there's a high proportion of women kind of stay-at-home moms. So we have this kind of a financial system to support that. So this kind of draws an image of a Finland as rather egalitarian, but then there's certain characteristics so that it is considered in a way right for a mother to stay at home, culturally right for a mother to stay at home when the child is small. And this is so, Finland is kind of a dual earner country, but with a very little bit of a kind of a traditional twist in a way to when the child is small. Okay. Then we know this is it's very small. I'm sorry for that, but I wanted to show you just briefly on the part-time work rates that, you know, in many countries, women tend to work part-time, but this is not really the case for Finland. We have the total part-time rate is around 15%, but this is all population, so not only parents. So there's a lot of young people working part-time. So this kind of explains this. Yeah, so I just wanted to show you this. Okay. Then about fertility. Well, there's been a declining rate as elsewhere, and it's now standing at just below 1.5. So the rate has been dropping a lot until very recently. Now the latest figures just from the recent years have been there's been a slight shift upward, but again here what has been said is that because of the insecurity of the 1990s and what that brought for people's minds, that the labor markets were not secure, that has been kind of been reflected partially in the decreasing fertility. Okay. So, but now we're going to the looking at carefully, or more carefully, about time and about what I call the micromechanisms of daily life. So why I think it is important, I think that the kind of the daily life brings up the kind of upfront the gender culture, the norms and the expectations people have. It also kind of brings knowledge about the everyday practices. And it's important to understand that, how time is allocated and the possibilities to respond to the needs of time. So, and also it is important to see that time is always kind of positions in relation to others. So individual workers of a larger unit, so household or family or community or society. So looking this from the labor market views. It also adds understanding on the relationship between the macro to micro level practices. So in a way, policy to practice, but also the in a way the micro practices always shape policy, and they shape the culture that people have. Okay, so what I mean by the micro mechanisms of daily life are the very kind of fine-tuned, very small practices that are taking place at the household level or at the family level in the everyday life. Okay, so time is in the heart of my study today. And if you think about it, then you can easily say that all situations involve many temporal dimensions. For example, spending time and the way that the timing of the activities, the pace of time, the hurried you are, or the kind of having the slow moments, or taking turns in interaction with people. And it's also about the kind of the interpretations on the past and the expectations on the future. So I think time is a very fascinating field of study in a way, when you think of time as having also social dimensions. And because when you think of time and you think of family time and family life, there's always kind of a need to negotiate. And there's always a need to have a synchronous time, because if the family doesn't have time together, then is it a family, I guess we can ask. So there's kind of a need to negotiate in a couple family. Or in a family, not in a couple family, but any kind of family. Okay. So here I took few notes on time being as a very kind of crucial element for families. And it has been said that time is a crucial resource for families, and that time and quality times are kind of symbols of a proper family life. So a proper family should spend time together. And I think this is a little bit amplified by social media and sharing, for example, photos as spending time together. So this kind of places a cultural, in a way, cultural pressure, perhaps, to show and witness yourself as a proper family. So in a way, it also constructs a pressure on parenting. And there, some scholars have said that for example, in Finland, this is one of the reasons for the declining fertility patterns, because of the cultural pressure of family time should be in a way perfect, and also kind of constructing the very kind of intensive parenting and intensive motherhood in especially. And then when that is combined to the insecure labor markets, then that kind of affects the kind of the cultural pressure and kind of leads to postponement of family. Okay, but that's not really my topic, but I just wanted to brought it up today as well. And then when you think about time and the social qualities of time, it really links to gender and what is according to the norms. So some talk of the moral economy of care and family life, and that's in a way explains and constructs an understanding how people locate in time. So there are these cultural expectations and cultural norms, and there are also power relations related to that. And I explained about the power relations a little bit later. And as we know, then women are more pressured, and women carry out most of the household work or the care tasks as well. Okay. Then few lines about what I call the family time realities, maybe. Also in Finland, as well as where it is really the working parents who struggle to balance work and family responsibilities and demands. So there are kind of competing interests and competing fields that look for the for the time. So it's schools, hobbies, friends, and recently also the time demands of social media. So I guess all in all, time is increasingly so managed. It is being negotiated. Well, I guess we can ask, is it being managed and negotiated? But certainly I think it is also. And then there are certain symbols of the time management, such as calendars. There are notes on the fridge door, and increasingly, obviously, mobile technology is used to coordinate time. And also in Finland, the family time is emphasized and it's valued. And the parenting and the intensive mothering is a trend. In a way, this is kind of a little bit of a paradox if you think against the culture and the practice of having very egalitarian, dual earning and full-time work family pattern in Finland. But all in all, the gender division of household work still persists in Finland. I'll show you, yeah, it was next slide here. So here I took from the time use diary, just a graph. There's a lot of information there. That there's been, so basically what I want you to pay attention to is the gender differences between the tasks and the minutes spent. So you see that women take most of the, for example, childcare and also food preparation. So the number of minutes, this is minutes per day, it's much higher compared to men's. You can also see a time difference. This is the time use study done in 1987 to 1999. That is the dark blue pillar, and then the green pillar in 2009 to 2010. So you see there's been some change. So there's there's a little bit of adaptation to the gender roles, but not as much as I guess the expectation has been. And also what is interesting is that there still persists the kind of difference on men's and women's tasks, that it's mostly women who take care of the time-dependent activities, so those that you can't postpone later. And so in a way, it's kind of this women's work that has to be done at a certain point, whereas comparing, for example, construction work or something like that, repairing, it's not so time dependent. Okay, so as we know that there are certain explanations why the gender patterns persists. There is the time availability perspective, and then the kind of what's being called the gender perspective. Basically, the time availability perspectives focuses on the gender differences in the looking at the allocation of family and care roles, and the perception on time is really on who has the time to use on certain activities. But then there's the gender perspective. What I've already said in many occasions, I guess, is the that the culture plays a role. So it's not only the time allocation is not only a result of who has the time, but it's really about the cultural understanding. Okay, so I guess the final point here is most relevant for this study is that the cultural expectations not only affect the use of time, but also who is kind of expected to organize the schedules and how time is viewed. I think time coordination is very interesting topic. So that means like who takes care of all of the coordination activities in the family life. Okay, so now going bit closer to my actual empirical part of the talk. So what I'm doing is, in a way, looking inside a family black box or a couple black box. It's not a total family image because I'm only concentrating on the adult members, and I have a very kind of certain type of family. It's a heterosexual family type that I'm looking at. So so what I'm doing is that I'm interested in looking at the couples and how time is being negotiated, and that is based on the idea that the in a way families and couples kind of create a shared belief system, so they are kind of systems of their own. So there is room for action for the individuals, but in a way I see that the family as such creates a system, but then the family is kind of operating as part of the wider institutional room. So kind of it's affected by gender culture and the expectations and the institutions such as schools and hobbies and so on. Okay. Yeah. And then in a way, the negotiation always kind of assumes that that couple would be in an equal position to negotiate. But then power relations are really kind of explicit. And I show this a bit later. And often it has been said that it's actually, it is women who are kind of in a more disadvantaged position to bring up their needs. Okay. I got my inspiration to do this study, looking at time systems from this, I would say, a classical household money management system. So this is studies done by Paul and Vogel. I don't know how to say it right, but there we go. They've written about this in many occasions. So what they are looking, or they were looking, is that the differences of families in the way that money is controlled and the way money is allocated. So it's not only kind of who has the power on money, but it's really about more on which money is earmarked, who has access to financial resources, and also the meanings attached to money. And they also divide the kind of the power relations relating to money. They divide strategic control, so who has control over decision making, and money management, who is kind of doing the daily operational, taking care of the money business in a way. So I was inspired by this framework, and I was thinking that if we say that time is also a resource, whether we could look inside the family to see how this would work in the family life. Here are the household money management systems. So they identified 5, or sometimes it was said that 4, but and sometimes 6. So it depends how fine-tuned analysis you go on. But I've used this 5 type of model. So basically identifying who has the main control. So it's the female whole wage system, male whole wage system, housekeeping allowance, pooling system, and independent management systems. So basically meaning that the female or the male has the sole responsibility, or the housekeeping allowance that both kind of put in a certain amount, or the pooling system. So basically this is the most equal and non-segregated model, or then the independent, so that you would have more kind of independent household incomes, or the kind of incomes in the family. based on a kind of a review on the study, on the studies who've looked at the household money management systems in different countries. They're saying that it's there are certain characteristics that kind of characterize which system is used. So low-income families tend to use the systems management by women. Then a traditional ideology increases the likelihood of a male control, and then the also employment pattern is to me it's very related to the income, so that the lower incomes kind of refer to the female managed system, and then education system, I think that is more linked to the kind of gender ideology. So the higher level of education likelihood increases the likelihood of shared resources and decisions. Okay. So what I wanted to do is to look, is time like money? So in a way you could say that, it is almost like money. There are power relations, there are cultural assumptions, and not all have similar access to time. And we talk of time as a resource. It's saved, it's used, it's borrowed, and it's managed. But it is different compared to money. In principle, all individuals have equal amount of time in principle to be used, so 24 hours a day. Okay. So we're going towards my empirical part. Basically, I was interested in looking at access to and negotiations on time. So my leading question was like yours, mine, or our time, and how the couples deal with that. And I thought it was interesting also in the context of the kind of rather egalitarian country like Finland, that whether we could actually identify differences using qualitative study. So I had 21 interviews of couples that I used for this study, and 16 of them were dual earners, and then 5 couples were couples where the other partner worked and the other partner was retired. It should stand unemployed or student families. Majority had children, but not all. And you can see the rough kind of age clusters of the couples. The couples were very kind of homogeneous in terms of their age. And the interviews followed a semi-structured outline. I was interested in quite a few topics in the interview, so ICT or digitization, and the family composition and the family history, daily routines, and so on. We interviewed the couples simultaneously, so meaning that the couples were sitting in the same interview situation, because I wanted to also to see how the couples negotiated in the interview situation, and whether they kind of I wanted to kind of to get their shared story of their daily life. So this is a different strategy than if you would interview couples separately. For my thesis, I actually did that. I interviewed the couples separately, and that's why I wanted to test how then this kind of simultaneous interviewing would be. Okay. So these are the kind of the themes that came up from the analysis. So, and because I wanted to follow the framework of the household money management systems, then I based my questions on that framework. So I was looking at the managerial power, so who makes the decisions, and then gender roles. I wanted to see the strategic power, so who kind of holds the ultimate power on the decisions. I wanted to see the access to private times and to hobbies, division of household work based on their narratives or what they informed me. Then I was interested on the negotiations, because one of my interests was to look how kind of this sort of negotiation is amplified by the certain time management system, and then overall about the understanding of time as commodity. I was kind of expecting to find some variation, but I was a little bit surprised how much there was variation among the couples that were interviewed. So I identified actually 4 types. So there were the female managed systems, where the wives have sole responsibility for managing all activities, household work and coordination taking place. And this kind of requires adaptation from the other partner. Then I identified the kind of a traditional male management system, where the male's orientation and way of spending time is very individualistic, but the partner's time is shared time of the family. There was a division of household work, but it was kind of male-dominated, based on his preferences. Then there was the pooling system. So this was the kind of shared responsibilities, and so it was really non-segregated types of work. And both partners have access to individual time, and both are kind of tools of being responsible for management and doing the household work. So in a way, it was fascinating how these couples explained that time is kind of coming from the common pool, as there is only one time in a way. And then there was this independent management system, where both partners have independent time resources, and neither has a primary responsibility on the coordination of the family activities. Okay, I have some examples. Just go through these systems. So the female management system. So basically it means that the male partner might have more time off from the household duties, but he has actually less managerial and strategic power to decide on the schedules. So this is a quote from a young couple. The lady is saying, "I leave notes to Daniel when I go to work," and then he says, "Well, yeah, that's the way I get things done." So she was really controlling of the of what's going on, leaving notes on what he should do over the day. This is another couple saying that the wife is explaining that we have divided household work in a certain way. I let Noel to empty the dishes, and he can take his clothes when they are dry, but he cannot do the dishes and hang up to laundry, and unless I'm really busy, and then he can assist me. So she's really taking control on who's doing what and what he should be doing. Okay. Then one quote, just as an example, where this man is a bit lost in the family schedules already. They were talking about their child's hobbies, and then the male partner was saying, "Oh, then they over the winter that their child had a music club," and then the female was saying, "No, this year there wasn't anymore." And then he was really surprised, and he said, "Really? I thought that there's not that anymore." And then she said, "No, earlier there was, but now there's this gym club, and there used to be a music club, but they're not at this winter." So to me, it tells like, because it's female managed, then in a way the man can get a bit lost also in these schedules. Just to give an example, that it seemed that the kind of strongest gender segregated household work across the couples was loading up the dishing machines. This topic came up in many interviews. That is very gendered and it's very female dominated. The dishing machine is my kingdom, says the lady, and he says, oh, she doesn't let me to do it, I would want to, but then she kind of goes on like he can't do it properly, so that I have to deal with it. Okay. Then the male system. So this really is that the male's orientation and way of spending time is very individualistic, and female time is shared. So it's mostly the male man who has the power over time, and it really kind of represents the traditional family model. I was a bit surprised actually to find so strong examples on this, and also that it was not only the couples with children who explained this kind of orientation or management system. So it's not only based on the role as a parent and having that childcare responsibilities. So here is it's an actual quote from a young couple, and he is saying that my time is my own time spent on hobbies, alone, or with my friends. And then she is saying, my time is our time spent on household work and spent together with the family. So it's very explicit, and I was a little bit surprised by this. Then there's another quote by a lady who was thinking of that sometimes she would like to work a bit longer, but it's not possible. And she says that, well, I can really think of those situations when I was thinking that I could perhaps continue working at home or something, and then I have not done that, and I needed to be flexible. For example, spend time with the child because my husband wanted to do some other stuff. Then I thought, oh, I didn't have time to do all that I needed to do. So it's really about who's being flexible. Okay. Then third, it was the shared or pooled management system. So it was really about time is mine, time is yours, and time is ours. So it's really kind of a shared time pool. And it was really that some of these couples, they shared ideologically and in practice the principle of equal sharing of household work and the responsibilities. Time was pooled, shared, and both carried the responsibilities, and both had access to individual time. And many of these couples actually calculated the hours spent on hobbies, for example, but they had a very constant negotiation on time. So yeah, some of these couples were very kind of equal in their orientation. Okay, and then the independent management system. This was something I guess I didn't, in a way, I didn't expect to find, because I thought interviewing couples living together, forming a family, maybe then this individualistic time management system would not perhaps exist. But yes, there were these few couples that had very individualistic systems. So neither has primary responsibility for the family activity or the coordination of schedules, but they're very kind of responsibility of the individuals. So both, in a way, had equal access and rights to time. And these were young couples, and they were kind of, in a way, I think, forming routines and a sense of family. It was really like my food, my laundry, your food, your laundry. It was not those shared household tasks. I have one quote here. There's a lady saying that usually we do the grocery shopping together because we don't have a car. But then she says, if I cycle, I can only buy my own stuff and perhaps something little for for Daniel. So it was very very kind of individualistic. Okay. Then what I did for all of these different elements is that I looked at the these different dimensions, and when you think of these, then you kind of know that the that there are certain elements that are the same for different types, but then there are differences as well. I think having done this study, I got very interested on the looking at this strategic power dimension that I have the red circle around. I think that would be very interesting to do something more on that. Okay, there's a lot of stuff in this table. I'll show you the I have the quote for the publication where this table is from. So I think I continue, taking up so much time already. Okay, then you might think that, okay, there might be disagreements in the interview situation, and in a way that the constructing a common story in a way fails. In the interview situations, there were not so many situations for that, and they also didn't tell me that much on disagreements. It's probably because of who's participating to the interviews and about the interviewing situation. But they were talking about the kind of disagreements on how much is too much and how often is often, about going for hobbies, for example. So they were kind of ponderings on these. And it has been said that in this kind of a couple interviewing situation, the couples kind of have a shared need to create a common story, and I think that played a role. So obviously then it would be interesting to know what image I would guess if this sort of a sharing or creating a common story would not take place. Okay. And also it has been said that when couples are interviewed together, then women are significantly less likely to say that they felt, for example, deprived in the family life compared to those who were interviewed alone. I think what I found was quite surprisingly big differences in the narrative. So maybe time is easier to discuss, I don't know. But certainly this would be interesting to perhaps follow a routine where you would interview both couples kind of individually and as a shared couple then, and see how that would work. Okay, then just few more notes on conclusions and kind of a tame home message. So time is not simply an objective community. It's spent, it's managed, it's coordinated, and it's very much as a social construct. It has differences in power. And also I do think that to understand the family daily life and the micromechanisms, it's very good to have this sort of a fine-grained analysis of daily life. Okay, and then what I think is it's kind of fascinating is to identify the difference between those who have the kind of a strategic power or control and the time management, because that really brings up the differences. I took a kind of a snapshot of the family life explained by the couples. Some of the older couples especially explained me how their family life had very kind of different kind of phases. And it was very interesting to see that and hear that, because they were saying very explicitly, telling about their family history and how also that changes, that there are different kind of phases in life in terms of time use as well, and how time is kind of viewed. So my study was kind of a snapshot on this. So it would be very fascinating to do longitudinal designs, maybe qualitative settings. And also then another thing that I've been thinking that would be very interested to work on is how can we actually measure the rights and the power relations and access to time using a quantitative measures. So that would be fascinating to do at some point. But at this time, I thank you.